After a long and busy garden season and preservation season, a long Wisconsin winter always sounds really good. And we spend winter snowed in, eating out of our freezers and our canning pantry, everything that we worked really hard the summer and fall before to grow and preserve and stick away for those long winter months that we have here in Wisconsin. Of course, like all things, spring comes and it is time to start the seeds for the next year's garden. For me in Zone 4B, that happens usually at the end of March, the beginning of April, where we will start a lot of our garden seeds heading into preparation for what is to be growing a year's worth of food for our family. A couple weeks after that, we are able to start throwing out some perennial mixes, getting our flowers ready. This is an important part for us in our garden, bringing in all of those really beneficial bugs and butterflies and all of those pollinators into the orchard and into the garden spaces that are going to help us along in having a really bountiful garden. Of course, around this time, it's been about a month since we've started our first batch of seeds. By now, we know what hasn't germinated, and I'm restarting seeds that need to be restarted. This is also when the weather really kind of starts turning here in Wisconsin. The beginning of May, you will get some warmer days, or at least some days that feel warmer after a long winter. Some 50-degree days, maybe some 60-degree days if we're lucky. And this is when a lot of our perennial mixes can go in, like all of our strawberries that we put in this bed here, as well as some asparagus, getting things mulched and kind of setting the tone for what is to be hopefully a lot of food for our family. Heading into some root vegetables, which is such a vital part of our food storage and things that we've just really started experimenting with in the last year or so after adding these raised beds are things like onions and shallots, potatoes, which have been really beneficial for us here and have pushed us into a really good direction in being more self-sufficient. We planted a handful of different kinds of onions this year, 2 different types of yellow bulbs, and the same shallots that we planted last year that we still have going strong in food storage. They look amazing, so we wanted to make sure we grew those again because they were so good for us last year. Of course, we're growing different types of potatoes this year because we can't stick to the same thing 2 years in a row. At this point, all of those starts that we started back in March are working on getting hardening off. They are going back and forth between inside during the nights when it is still freezing, but during the day when it's warm, they are outside and getting kind of acclimated to being outside so that in the next coming days, they can find their way into the ground, weather permitting. May 12th is our last frost date, but that doesn't always mean that it's actually our last frost. And this was a year where we had a lot of late frosts. Here we are prepping our 4th and final raised bed that we have completely open. This was the potato bed last year, so it really needed a lot of TLC, and it just didn't get exactly what it needed this year. So we kind of chaos gardened this raised bed full of lettuce and spinach. We put carrots in here as well. And of course, I always have a helper, at least somewhere around me, when it comes to planting seeds and doing all of the things. Next day is kind of when we really started looking into the orchard. Things were kind of getting in the ground here. Some perennials, some annuals. We put some marigolds in here that, spoiler alert, end up dying because of all of the frost that we ended up getting. But we put some herbs in and some different things into our rows here in the orchard. At this point, we need to go and get what I didn't start myself here. There are some things that I'm just not a good seed starter at, and a lot of those are my brassicas. And because my greenhouse sells them so cheap. It almost makes more sense for me to just buy them from a greenhouse, support a local family, and keep my money local, which is something that I also think is part of being self-sustaining, is a self-sustaining kind of neighborhood society. And this is all in the same. So I went and bought all of my cabbage and my broccoli and my cauliflowers, a couple peppers from them, and just things that maybe didn't do very well on my own starting, or things that I just straight up don't start myself. And I came home with a nice little carload of veggies and flowers that are going to find their home in my family's cellar. Today is a putzing day, and I figured since it's too cold to put plants in the ground, we might as well work on this fencing project. So Joe's fixing the fencing. We pulled down all the fencing around the old garden here and all the old chicken run fencing and the gate and everything, and Joe's gonna work on connecting it from the orchard fence kind of back along this way. We're gonna get this back half of the fence up, and while he's doing that, I'm gonna work on taking down all of the cattle panels and pulling out T-posts so we can move these into the orchard for the new garden space for this year. One down, probably 20 to go. The good thing is the ground is so soft, it's so easy to pull these posts out. There was quite a big gap there, almost a 2-week gap where we had lots of freezing temperatures. So I just kept all of those starts that I purchased in my house. I kept them watered, kept them under grow lights, and finally, almost 2 weeks later, our frost threats are gone, and we were able to roll out some landscape fabric and start getting all of these plants in the ground, which felt amazing. This is the first year we're using the landscape fabric. I'm sure you've noticed by now that I am very pregnant, and I just want to make this season as easy on me as possible. So we decided to roll out some landscape fabric that we already had left over and put these in the fabric and lay them out with mulch. Because our planting style is so different this year than in years past, I was really unsure on spacing. We've never used a landscape fabric before. We've also never planted in the orchard before. We've always had a separate garden space, and it made it a little bit challenging for me to try to figure out, okay, how many plants can I fit? How many plants do I need for my family in each variety of things that we're planting to be able to hopefully grow a year's worth of food? And how do we make all of that stuff fit? So it was a very different kind of experience for me this year, but also very fun. I like coming up with like new solutions and trying new things. So it was a lot of fun. We got in all of our zucchini and our lettuces that we'll eat throughout the summer. And of course, my daughters had so much fun planting in some of their flowers, their dahlias, and their seed mixes that they had done, the flowers that they had started. Of course, we also have to put in all of the seeds, our beans and our corn and our peas, green beans, all of the things. And this year I'm trying some new varieties, trying some different planting styles, of course, and it all happens over the course of a couple days. I'm a lot slower these days. I am officially full term, and doing all these things full term, a lot of up and down and up. I'm just a little bit slower these days, so we're spreading things out over the course of a couple days. But nonetheless, things are still getting done. I'm giving everybody some compost in each and every one of these little holes. We didn't want to, quote unquote, waste money laying a thick layer of compost over the entire row if we knew we were only going to have plants kind of in specific sections with these little holes. So I opted to just go back and add a little bit of compost to each hole. And I like that I did that. Heading into another day is when all of our tomatoes were getting in. I had about a 3-day kind of section in the weather where it was going to be very overcasted, the sun wasn't going to be out, and that is an ideal time to transplant things because they aren't really going to get shell shocked by the sun. even though these plants have been hardened off. So my husband tilled these little sections in between the trees for me in the orchard and laid down the landscape fabric and dropped off some wood chips for me so that this job would be as easy on me as possible. I'm running a string from T-post to T-post just to help me plant my tomatoes in a straight line because I am incapable of planting in a straight line. We got all of our tomato varieties in with the help of 2 of my kids. They also went ahead and planted their pumpkins up on the trellis and got those composted in as well. The kids love the help. They love to be involved, especially when it comes to something that they're excited about, like jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. Of course, by now, we have been working on our garden for almost 4 months, and things are finally in the ground. Here, London's helping me cover up our strawberries that we planted way back in the beginning of May with some deer netting to keep the deer out. And that is what it takes to plant out a year's worth of food for my family of 6, soon to be 7. I hope wherever you guys are, you're having a fantastic day. And coming up very soon, I will have a full garden and orchard tour to show you guys everything we have in the ground.